once every 10 to 12 years, there is a big outbound migration from California to New York. And actually, California lost more people in the early 90s, way more people as a percentage of its population than it's losing now.
Oh.
And there's these factors at play, like when housing, it tends to correspond to housing bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
When housing gets really expensive in New York and California, like it's always expensive, but when it gets really expensive, people say, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm moving to the more affordable area. It also has to do with social unrest and crime. So obviously New York and California are dealing with outflows from that today. In the early 90s, it was much the same thing. Like California had the LA riots in the early 90s. Like in some ways it was worse back then than it is today.
That's hard to believe.
So I don't know what the exact stat is, but in the LA riots, I think it was like 92, 93. I want to say like thousands of people died.
Wow.
More than the entire country during the social unrest in the 2020 in LA in the early 90s.
That's insane.
Yeah. And so I'm not saying it's good today. Clearly, there's issues that these areas all have, but I'm just trying to draw the point is that there's a cyclical nature to this. And a lot of people are trying to tell themselves that what happened during the pandemic with people moving to Texas and Florida and Tennessee was some new paradigm. It's not a new paradigm. And what we're going to see now is we're already seeing this in California. The home prices are starting to come down. This is what tends to stem the flow. So as home prices in New York and California come down, fewer people are going to leave those areas. And it's not as if people...
Has the damage already been done, though? With regard to supply and demand? If you lose that much population, you have these many houses, they're sitting...
Yeah.
I want to move to Dallas, but I live in Anaheim. I got to sell this to buy that, but no one's moving here. How am I going to sell?
So basically, it's a great question. And the answer is yes. Like
I'm full of them, dog.
Well, let's keep doing it. The answer is yes. There is some type of permanent loss there. But the thing to think about is that in a place like LA, I think only 53% of households own.
Okay.
So for every owner that leaves, there's a renter who desperately wants to buy. Whereas in Texas, the ownership share is much higher.
Yeah.
So that's what keeps those markets in the long run expensive, especially because they don't build new homes really in San Diego and LA. They build lots of new homes in Dallas. And so home builders are actually, they tend to go crazy and then there's a bust, but home builders are actually pretty good at like generally figuring out, they don't know it through data necessarily, but they kind of generally figure out like how many people are moving here and how many homes we need to build. And in the long run, Dallas and Austin build tons of homes. Austin builds 8 times more single family homes per capita than San Francisco. So that's why Austin can absorb the migration flow, or could previously absorb the migration flow and not have crazy home prices.